Hello, 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 everybody. It is Narrative Tarot. I'm here for your moon, April 2021 tarot reading. This is for people who have significant moon or Cancer aspects in their chart or transits in their chart. Comment, like, subscribe to the channel. It is greatly appreciated because it helps populate the video, gets it out there to people, letting them know that, hey, other people watch this, you may watch it. You may want to watch it as well. It may pertain to your life, things like that. Relevancy, all that stuff. I will say, I don't know how this is gonna go because it's been really windy for the last like 25-ish minutes and the light kind of did like go off. So if it goes off, I'm assuming it's not the reading for you. And we'll just have to do another reading for moon. So if that happens, it's gone off and then come back on. But like, it's just one of those things. So moon, April 2021. I'm not really feeling anything like significant as far as April 2021 when it comes to it. I mean, you'll have your new moon in Aries, if I remember that correctly. Is it new moon in Aries? Your new moon in Aries, and then your full moon in Scorpio. So there's not too much going on. So I'm going to do two parts to this reading. The first part is going to be the tarot. The second part is going to be this cloud deck that I have. And then we'll go from there. Okay. Okay, so we have the upper worlds, the lower worlds. This could all be one story, but I paired them upper and lower, and so each one could be its own individual story, independent of the other. So we have the Eight of Cups from the Deviant Moon, the Ace of Swords. So the deck I just referred to is the Deviant Moon Tarot. And so what I got from this is the Ace of Swords is too material of a rejection, and that you have to hold a physical object to reject something. Your ability to think it internally, to act on it, is far more powerful than bringing up boundaries and borders and barriers. Like, this materiality is just of the mind, like explanations, pontifications, but particularly explanations, things that you have to concretely like spell out for people. If it's a no, it's a no, is kind of what this card is for me right now. If it's a no, it's a no. And you know that it's a no, and the other person will get that it's a no when they see you no longer. So there's no need for like, yeah, so you know, this like friendship is over and I really feel like unappreciated. I don't know if this is like capturing this. I really feel like unappreciated, and you know, this is why it's like, yeah. But it's like the Ace of Swords has its thing. It's like explaining it to people who need guidance, corrective guidance. But it could be like, you don't need to like put physical distance between them. Like, you can just put mental distance between them. Like, yeah, this is more like a physical distance that you have to put up, that you have to like attach yourself to, or that the idea that distance from people is always just physical. No, it could be mental, it could be emotional, it could be spiritual, things like that. And so making sure that distance, if you're gonna do distance, the proper distance would probably be more mental distance and a mental boundary that you you set up, and that mental boundary is the process in the beginning of becoming kind of more of an individual. Just because if you've had the time to think about the ways in which you want to separate, it means you've already undergone like some sort of process of understanding that this is an individual kind of moment for you that you have to break away, as opposed to this communal, I have to stay in this community oriented kind of thing where the group really relies on you. I kind of feel like the Ace of Swords almost in a way is given a task within the wider community to do something, and it's a duty and it's an assignment. The Eight of Cups is less of that. It's more of your own individual happiness, your own individual moving forward, your own individual journey as an individual. And so the moon, you know, cycling through all of these signs, 12 signs, it doesn't have time to stay at one sign for the next, you know, 3 days, 4 days, 5 days, 6 days, a week, a month. It can only stay in each sign like, you know, like a day and a half, 2 days, or something like that. It has to move on. It has to commune how it communes with that sign, relay the message it has to relay, give off the energy it has to give on, and then it has to move on. And it does that for every sign. So for you, Eight of Cups is just kind of like, there's no huge announcement or fuss. You probably shouldn't enter into partnerships where this Ace of Swords has to be there in the first place. It's like there needs to be this idea that you're just passing through, and it has to be understood through all your relationships. I think that's a thing. If you're somebody who is mutable, even though the moon rules Cancer and Cancer is more of a cardinal, if you're someone who's more mutable, changeable, you're not really attached, you practice non-attachment, stuff like that, I don't. So I can't really tell you what that standpoint's from. You have to have people who like understand that. You can't be surrounded by people who don't understand that. Like, you can't. And it's not this like huge boundary that has to be put up. It's just the understanding is the boundary. It is the boundary that you have to where people don't want to make you a communal and set you in this particular role that you have to play forever, right? They understand that if you take on, should you take on a role, it's not forever, it's for as long as you need it, and you'll be able to go forward from that role or from that situation, from that person even, in some cases, and move on to the next thing. So maybe that's something that you have to learn, to move on to the next thing. And do it on your own outside of a community. But you thinking of the next move and going into different places and you acting on it is the boundary. It's not the pontification, the explanation, the justification of something. It's not the, I'm just going to move across the country. It's that mental process and that action that helps solidify that boundary, so to speak. That boundary doesn't board you in or anything like that. It doesn't pigeonhole you. It doesn't stereotype you. It actually helps you stay a lot more open to change, stay a lot more open to your own BS. It allows it to sift in and out. It allows you to change. It allows you to re-examine. It allows you to stay unstuck. It allows you to flow a lot better, receive a lot better, give a lot more freely, have an open mind, be challenged, things like that. So the Ace of Swords is kind of like a little less. You have to hold it in a particular way, usually a defensive stance. You have to be very wary of the material. It is a blade. It can cut you as the holder. It can cut other people if you yield it wrong or wield it wrong. And so just make sure that if you are going to use boundaries and borders and stuff like that, that they're properly used, they're properly discussed, they're properly talked about. And I think that Ace of Swords, if you stay in that energy, you have to relay information to people. You have to relay information to people in that way. You can't just go and do it because you have a sword. You have to understand that people, when they see a sword, they have certain reactions to things. They have certain ideas about swords. They have certain ideas. There's an entire unpacking process that has that you don't need, because you need to be able to move through. You know, you can't go through the sun or the moon in Virgo and like stay there for the next week talking about Virgo. Hey, I'm sorry I have this sword. I know this sword is like a trigger for you, and you know, but this is my point of view. Like, you can't do that. You have to be free and open. So you kind of have to walk through the room. Hey Virgo, what's going on? Virgo replies to you, hey, and then you walk out the door. You know, you observe, you stay there, you observe, you gain all the information. It was like, hey, you know, your house looks nice. I think there's like a water leak upstairs. You know, check that out, and I'll see you next time. That's how it's supposed to be, versus if you walk in with a sword, they're like, where did you get this sword? Oh, I got it from this place. Oh, okay, that's cool. My grandma has a sword. There's like cutting out like a whole bunch of chit chat, a whole bunch of like unnecessary like stuff. Like, because you spend so much time talking about the sword and where you got it, or trying to just say, I'm not going to hurt you, them calling the cops. This is like a really long drawn out like example, that you never explain like the real issues. You never explain your real perception. It's like your perception is so wrapped up in the sword and not like what you're actually observing. And it's so wrapped up in what the other person is observing and not in an actual dialogue with them about key things that need to be worked out. It's like too wrapped up in like this extra shit. So just make sure that you understand that, and in April you just pass through. Now we have the 10 of Cups in the upper world, 5 of Cups in the lower world. Bickering will cut things in half. So I think that's kind of why like this is there. Like, just pass through. I don't know what moon you have, but depending on the moon you have, you might end up having these like shadows like come up in your thought process. Like, I don't know, it's some sort of like knee-jerk reactive kind of thing. I don't know if like technology is gonna fuck up for you, or I don't know if like it's gonna be a pain in the ass to deal with certain people in April. Like, some people might be like, they may be Taurians, they may be Aries, but like it may just be certain people that just like don't rub you the right way. Like, they just, they're just like not diametrically opposed to what you want and who you are, but it's just like it's less of an opposition, even though it's like 5 and the 10 and stuff like that. It's less of the opposition and more of like a quincux kind of like energy. Like, it's almost like this idea like, oh, we're so close, like we can get there, but it's like this one little thing that just doesn't click, and it's like kind of off. And I think that one thing that doesn't click, if you focus on it, like this will come up and you'll start doing all this pontificating and all of these issues and messages and texts and long drawn out statements and letters and just all this other shit to not say what you want to say, not be truly honest and open, and then you'll just like suffer for it because you won't get to say what you want to say. You'll have gone through this shit list of a whole bunch of stuff. I don't know what's going on. Why is this clicking? I don't know. We're clicking so much. The 10 of Cups is kind of an idea of staying in harmony, but not the actual act of staying in harmony for me at this moment. I kind of feel like it's kind of like this isn't getting materialized, because this Five of Cups is so strong in this reading that it kind of prevents this from becoming a reality. It kind of prevents it from becoming something that you see as an actual possibility, because okay, so when this person is like yelling at them, they have to close their ears. So it's kind of like there's experiences that might come up in April that make you close off your ability to do this, and they make you have to, like, the closing off your ears is the sword. The closing off your ears is this sword, kind of this taking up space. Like, this blocking out is kind of taking up space energetically, if nothing else, and it's just not allowing the negative out, because whatever you've heard beforehand, now you're plugging it, and that can stay and ruminate in your mind, and then you're not unplugging yourself, so that, like, almost you do a dump and the words come out. And because there's no other, like, way of you dealing with this, if your hand's plugged in, you can't write down your feelings. If your hands are in here, you know, you're probably not saying anything substantial to the person to fight them off. You're kind of just left with this noise bouncing off of you, literally, as a sound. And then you're having the looping kind of words that did get stuck, and then you're unable to do it. And whatever this is dims and dims and dims and dims, or it becomes so high in your crown chakra. It's like it was in your mind, and then as these events happen, these slowly comes out of your crown chakra, and then if it leaves it long enough, because it's trying to dissociate itself from the space and what's going on in the mind, which is just so weird, the wind blows it away and carries it away, and it's almost like there's a filter that goes over this that makes it really gray, or it like vanishes completely. And then all you're left with is this. And the thing to watch out with this is this person eventually does leave, but you're trying to make sure that they don't leave with everything, or they don't cause situations that you give up your sovereignty or your mental happiness or your mental goals or whatever, in the attempt to block them off, thinking that if you do that, blocking off in the way that I just said, pontificating or trying to explain or whatever, not listening, and instead of doing this, you're sitting there, and that's what that Ace of Swords is about. You're sitting there instead of just getting up and moving. And if you get up and move, you'll have this, because the Eight of Cups, you know, is an active journey to move to the 9, to move to the 10, and they're not trying to look back at the 7, they're not trying to look back at the 6, the 5, the 4, the 3, the 2, or the Ace. They're trying to move forward to the 9, and then they're trying to move forward to the 10. And the only way you can do that is if you're able to walk away. So you can't get stuck mentally looping or mentally justifying or trying to justify something to someone or explain something to someone. You have to get up and walk away. Because the longer you sit there, the longer your dreams kind of fade, or they disappear, or they end up getting sidetracked, or, you know, it ends up being a long drawn out process for you. And then when that person is gone, then it's kind of like, you know, if that person leaves and then comes back, then it's just like, oh, you haven't done anything. Like, oh, why haven't you done anything? And when you go to say, like, bitch, like, you know, I was fussing with you for, like, the entire time. Like, for 2 years I had this battle with you, or I had all these thoughts and you held me down. They're just going to be like, I don't care. Like, I wasn't here. Like, you could have dealt with that. I don't understand. You know, like, it's like people can come in and they cause problems and then they leave, and then, like, it clearly is, like, something that bothers people, and they'll come back like nothing happened. And then when you explain to them, which is wasting your fucking energy, they'll be like, well, I don't understand, like, you should have gone to therapy, you should have did something, or you should have blah blah blah. And it's kind of like, at the end, the realization is like, you're right, I shouldn't have like let you occupy my mind for that fucking long, because you weren't worth it. And so that's what you have to arrive at, that like, you're not gonna occupy my mind. It's like, unless you pay rent in this hoe, like, you're not gonna occupy mine. So, because that is that sword, and then you have to learn how to wield it, you have to learn how to like deal with it, you have to learn how to wade through trauma, go through all, yeah, that, like, we don't have time for that. And like I said, it's the moon, like, it's not meant to occupy one sign for like the whole month. It has 12 signs to do. So, you know, there's that. Oh my god, like, I talk so much about this. I'm like, ooh. Well, let me just go ahead and do one card for this instead. We have the Sand from the Cloud deck. So the Sand, to me, is that this is this 10 of Cups. Don't let this blow away like grains of sand. You know, the thing with sand is, like, individually, you really can't. Like, it's like, it comes together to make a larger whole, but, like, really, you can't really see that you're holding an individual grain of sand, most likely. It's just, the main issue is not the sand. Oh, it's a ladybug. The main issue is not the sand. It's the air that blows the sand away. It's the air, or, you know, water, when you see people do sand castles. It's the air that blows it away. It's the air that destabilizes it. The destabilization, and air is related to thought. So, for the purpose of this reading, so don't let that destabilize what you have going. Don't let it blow away your grains of sand, because the way that sand works, or these thoughts work, they're too precious to kind of try and close them in to the thing. You'll crush it. But then also, because it's a 10 of Cups, it's a full, complete set. When each of these cups starts going one by one by one, you have this, like, sort of atrophy situation happening where you destabilize. Like, each cup loss is a destabilization. It's each grain of sand that's being blown away. But it's because you're being so preoccupied by something else that you can't deal with it. You can't you can't focus on it. You can't deal with it. You can't do anything. It's like building a sandcastle and then somebody calling you off, and then the act of calling you off is the part of the destabilization process. So when you start to walk away, what happens? It's almost like this thing leading you away causes the air to blow, the tide to come in and wash the shit away. You know, a little kid comes over. It's almost like that is that sparks the disintegration of the dream. And it's like through your continual, like, walking away or hanging with them, not watching it, you know, all of this destruction happens. And then you're left with, like, nothing. And they're like, oh, well, you can build it again. It's like, well, it's like 6 o'clock. Like, it's getting dark now. Like, I can't do it. They're like, oh, well, you know, maybe next time. And next time is like 5 years from now. You know what I'm saying? Don't let anybody delay your dreams and put you on a timeline that's farther out than you want. Like, that's just not working. And then we have the voice. Use your voice. when people try to do stuff to distract you, when people try to do stuff to derail you, use your voice. And not even in a like confrontational, I have to like defend myself kind of way. It's kind of like almost like you have to have an affirmation. Like if somebody says you can't do it, like you have to immediately have an affirmation of I can do this, or I am unaffected, or I am unchained, or I am not chained to other people's perceptions of me, or something like that. It's almost like that has to go up immediately. Like that has to go up. Like this 8 of Cups action is like you voicing your opinion, you voicing your not integrity, but you voicing your way of being, or what you want, or what you're aiming to achieve. So if somebody does say something like really cruel, like, oh, you can't do it, or I'm not really feeling this, or why are you doing this, or why are you still doing this, stuff like that, like it has to be an immediate, like, you know, this perception isn't correct. I'm not going to allow this person to bring me down. It's kind of like when the moon goes into houses that are quite difficult, right? If it goes into Capricorn, it's opposing it, or something like that. Or it goes into like Scorpio or something like that, like really difficult houses for it to go into, then it has to put up that immediate like armor to not be affected by that energy, because it has to move on to the next house or to the next sign. It can't be affected by that. It has to affect the change of the space around it. It has to relay the information, not the room. You have to observe the room and give information about the room to improve the room. The room can't give you information about you. Not even on it's a room, it can't talk. But that's not the role of the room. The room isn't meant to tell you what's wrong. You're meant to go in there and tell it what needs to be improved. And usually through that process of being observing and things like that, you do get perceptions back on what needs to be changed. You do get information back on what you need to work out. You see yellow curtains and you're like, man, these things are ugly as fuck. And then you rethink, you know, you point out, oh, like, those things are tattered and worn. That was useful information for the person. But when you start adding other shit to it, oh, those things are ugly as fuck. That has to be reevaluated. That bounces back at you, and you get that information. Like, why am I saying that? Then it comes out that you had a best friend that you had a really tough falling out with, and they had yellow curtains in their room. So you learn about yourself through other people, but you can't stay stuck in other people's rooms. You have to move on. But going through their room helps you as well. It's like, do you get it? Hopefully you get it, because this is like really abstract kind of stuff. I wish I could explain it and in a way that isn't abstract, but it's quite abstract for me to get and then explain. Let's see how much time we have. Okay, I'm gonna wrap it up there because I think that's all that needs to be said. Cancer or moon, lunar people, you were meant to pass through many rooms in your lifetime. You're meant to pass through many experiences. Don't stay stuck to them. Don't stay attached to them. When things are done, let them fall. When you know and believe that something is there to use as an obstacle, step back, observe the room, observe the information it's giving you, and observe the information that you can give it, and have that mutual exchange so that when you move on, you don't feel like you've gained nothing. You don't feel like you've given everything, you know? So be a little bit more discerning about the rooms that you enter into, and then the rooms that you have to enter into through duty or responsibility. Alright, I will talk to you guys later. I hope that you have a great experience with this reading. And comment, like, subscribe to the channel. And I'll talk to you guys in the next reading. Take care.